Welcome to the Golden Seams podcast. I'm Gabe, and along with my co-host Michae, we're thrilled to have you join us on this transformative journey of self-discovery and personal growth. Our podcast is all about helping you uncover your authentic self, find your true calling, and create prosperity in alignment with your deepest values and aspirations.
We're diving deep into the theme of boundaries, a crucial aspect of living authentically and pursuing your true path. We're exploring Melissa Urban's insightful book, The Book of Boundaries. Melissa Urban, known as the Boundaries Lady, offers invaluable guidance on setting clear, compassionate limits in all areas of life, helping countless individuals reclaim their time, energy, and well-being. In the past, when I'd ended a long-term relationship, the person I was splitting up with and I almost always went our separate ways. I certainly didn't have to talk to them again if I didn't want to, and it was often less painful to just move on. When I divorced, that wasn't an option. I had to keep my ex in my life for the sake of our child, and we had to find a way to work together in the healthiest way possible. Despite having good boundaries in other areas of my life, I had very few when it came to my ex, at least not at first. In the midst of our divorce, I was so emotionally distraught and under so much stress that I'd flip-flop between chatting with him like we were still a couple and insisting he could only speak to my attorney. Neither communication style was helpful, but I didn't know how to set the limits I needed to successfully divorce, keep our child safe, and preserve my mental health. This is from Melissa Urban's Chapter 7 in the Book of Boundaries, Set the Limits That Will Set You Free When You Can't Just Walk Away, Setting Boundaries with Co-Parents. Today, Gabe and I are going to be sharing with you boundaries with an ex and why they're extremely challenging. We're going to talk with you about what Melissa says about being ahead of the game on parenting plans, discussing Melissa's strategies, including how to shift your focus when you're dealing or talking with an ex, self-boundaries for co-parenting, why not everything requires a response, and sometimes the best response is no response at all, why it's important to watch what you allow in your field, why it only takes one person to improve a relationship, Melissa's suggestions for additional support with an especially difficult ex, releasing expectations and letting co-parenting with an ex evolve, and of course, Melissa's scripts. As we begin to discuss this chapter, after reviewing it, Gabe and I both felt everything that's in this chapter is great for duplicating with difficult bosses and coworkers or any relationship that you can't just get out of. Everything that's being implemented here that Melissa shares, dealing with an ex and setting up co-parenting, we ask you to expand your outlook and imagine also in ways that this could be beneficial in dealing with a boss, dealing with coworkers or work colleagues where you are obligated and committed to a job that is long-term and that you can't get out of.
Melissa continues, boundaries with an ex. Most of the questions I get from people cannot realistically be solved with a clear, kind boundary. Here's just some of what readers have asked me. My ex says terrible things about me to our kids. How do I get him to stop? My ex feeds my kids all kinds of junk food that she knows I don't allow. How can I set a boundary around their diets? My co-parent shows up late all the time when it's their day with the kids. What can I do? My son plays lots of video games at his dad's house, but we seriously limit screen time here. Can I make his dad get on board? My ex goes out a lot, leaving the kids with his mom. I wish he'd spend more time with them during his week, or let me keep them if he's going out.
This just tells us a little bit about why boundaries can be challenging when you're co-parenting. But Melissa takes us back to remember a boundary isn't about controlling someone else or telling them what to do. Boundaries are a limit around what you will or will not do in order to keep yourself safe and healthy. She says, and the cold hard truth is that when it comes to co-parenting, boundaries aren't always a viable solution. She goes on to explain to us, we're not able to dictate what the other person does. So in many of these instances, according to Melissa, a boundary would be attempting to dictate what the other parent does at their own house with their own child. The other strike against you in this is even if you could set a boundary, enforcing it could possibly harm your child or worse, violate your legal agreement. So for example, if the boundary that you were trying to set or enforce meant the kids were not available to their other parent, That is hard on the kids if they're looking forward to it and they need time with that parent. She goes on to say that in reality, unless it's something you've memorialized in legal paperwork, it's impossible for you to enforce your standards of care, health, communication, or socialization on a co-parent.
Melissa says, if you have reason to believe that your child's health or safety is in jeopardy, you should take immediate action through the appropriate legal channels.
She goes on to discuss parenting plans, and she says that she has heard of unusual clauses in parenting plans, which is a legally binding document, such as the number of evenings that a child can spend with a babysitter, or whether or not the parents can share photos of their child on public social media. She goes on to say that if you think of those situations ahead of time and talk them through with your attorney, you're well ahead of the game. That has got to be one of the biggest factors in handling this, is to be very proactive and be ahead of the game and make sure you have an attorney that's willing to put those things toward and forth to the judge. One of the best strategies that I think that she offers here is to shift the focus. One area where you can set boundaries here is on the communication between you and your co-parent. Outside of their behavior with your children, which you largely can't control, what kinds of limits could you set so that your communications with your ex are healthy, kind, and effective? Shifting the focus to the way you're communicating with your ex, allowing your ex to communicate with you, would prove huge in smoothing out this new phase of your relationship. Think in terms of this as a work colleague or a boss or something like that.
Melissa shares some suggestions. Limit the communication methods. Phone calls or in-person meetings were more likely to turn into fights. She decided that all communications needed to happen in writing, so each of them had a record of what was agreed to, and then they would follow up a summary of the conversation via text. Like Michae pointed out earlier, this is a good rule to also apply to work settings.
It is, and if you're working with somebody difficult or a difficult ex, she also suggests meeting in public because it's easier for everybody to keep their cool, but also to keep in mind any conversations you have with them, you do leave yourself in a vulnerable situation if it's difficult. This is why communicating through writing is so beneficial.
Melissa then says to limit communication topics. She shares how she set a boundary around sharing anything personal about her life, how work was going, who she was dating, or how her family was with her ex. They focus solely on talking about their child together, and she shares how much this protected her own healing process and journey. I think that this is really applicable also to coworkers, bosses, and other workplace settings, where you're not only setting up a boundary to protect the dynamic, but also yourself.
I love the line she offers if somebody wants to talk to her about her ex during that time, where she would say, "Oops, I'd rather not know anything about his life right now. We're respecting each other's privacy." That also, again, could translate easily over into the work environment where someone's sharing something with you and you don't want to be a part of it. Sometimes just being witness to those situations can put you into a further sticky situation, so it's good to shut them down, but to do it nicely. We're doing boundaries in a very different way, and we'd like to thank all of our listeners, subscribers, followers, and especially our wonderful Patreon members for your support, sharing this community and this path, quoting us, tagging us, whatever kind acts you do with your friends, family, colleagues, and those who, well, just get it. Your gentle but powerful acts of support, no matter how small, tell us and the world this resonates. So we thank you wholly and fully from our hearts for being the catalysts wherever you are, because it only takes one step forward to begin to step into your magnificence.
Melissa says to speak clearly about expectations. She shares that she requested clearly and in writing that if someone was going to be a regular part of her son's life, she wanted to meet them. She made sure she defined what regular was and explained that she trusted her partner to loop her in when the time was right. She offered to do the same. She goes on to mention how she can't control whether or not it was honored, but she laid the groundwork and automated the boundary. Melissa continues, reestablish rules of engagement. She basically says to follow the rules the attorneys gave her and her ex, to not say or do anything that a judge wouldn't look too kindly on. And I think that's a great thing to keep in mind, a great way to test if you're crossing a line or not. And also to remember that all of this is being done to preserve the well-being and health of your children or child.
That's so true, Gabe. I believe the best advice she gives is that the attorneys had told them not to say or do anything that a judge wouldn't look kindly on. But in truth, the bottom line is the reason there's a judge there is to look out for the well-being and welfare of the child.
Right. She really illustrates a strong picture here, agreeing to boundaries around yelling, name-calling, threatening, or using our child as a pawn. I thought that was an interesting description of how things can get ugly during a separation.
Discussing self-boundaries for co-parenting, Melissa says she set quite a few boundaries with herself. These were limits that she decided were the healthiest for her around her relationship, her communication style, and the way she wanted to show up. Setting these boundaries with herself helped her stay in her business, kept her out of her exes, and helped her show up at her best during some seriously stressful situations. Melissa gives some great tips on how she created self-boundaries during this time. She said, "Don't run over my own limits." She kept herself in check by not checking her ex's Instagram feed or checking in on him or asking about him. She continuously put distance between the two of them, respected that was for her own mental health and healing, but also for his privacy. She kept herself to that boundary. She also realized that she couldn't control if he was checking in on her and her behavior, so she didn't let that take up any of her space or time. She didn't choose to block him on social media because she trusted herself not to look at his public feeds and didn't have a need to hide her public content from him. It may be a reasonable step to take it if you need it. The next thing she offers, which I think is tremendous, is leave the kid out of it. There were times where her son would tell her about his weekend with his dad. He'd share details of his father's life. She let her son tell his story, but set a limit upon herself that she wouldn't ask for extra information, such as if there was a special friend dad had that weekend, she wouldn't ask anything about that friend or any details on his personal or business life because she didn't want to invade her ex's privacy. Also because she felt it was a sneaky way of overrunning her own healthy limit, as she puts it. I really respect that she said she vowed to never put their son in the middle of their communications like that. Next, she offers to be generous within those limits. She says, "My boundaries with my ex included speaking to him only about my son, but within that boundary." She decided to be generous when it came to communicating. During the weeks when her son was with her, she would regularly send photos, funny stories of things that their son had done and said, updates on important milestones, new foods he liked, games he was enjoying. Her co-parent picked up on this and responded in the same way, which meant they each maintained a strong connection to their son during the times when he wasn't with them. That's so good. That's a cool move in my book. The next thing that she gives us is to speak kindly. And she says, "It would have been so easy to trash my ex to their family or their friends, even the public, because she had a large social media following and the relationship had been quite visible. She decided from the outset that she was not going to do that. She had a few people that she trusted who she could let herself speak freely with to vent, but outside of those individuals, committed to saying nothing unkind about him or discussing any of the reasons why they were getting a divorce." She kept in mind, this is a big point, speaking negatively about her ex could eventually hurt her child once he was old enough to notice. That was the primary reason why she made that decision. I'd like to add in here, I do believe in speaking kindly, but I also believe in speaking honestly. If an ex is not a good parent or has abandoned your child or walked away or has harmed your child in some way, I think it's really important and valid to listen, comfort, and ensure your child that they feel loved, valued, and it's not about them, but the other parent, to support them and to get them additional support. And this is just my 2 cents. I also think it's significant to not solicit any of this information to untrustworthy parties. And also, don't ask others about their families unless the information is offered. Really, what it comes down to is asking yourself, why do you need to know? If the shoe is on the other foot, asking other people about their personal and family lives isn't always necessary. Ask yourself why you need to know that if you're inquiring. That's just a heads up for being kind to the children. Melissa offers that she limited her responsiveness. She did this by not responding immediately to every text or email her ex would send, especially if she felt that it was starting to set her off. She discovered that pausing before replying, waiting until she was calm and could see the situation more clearly, this helped her reply more kindly, which made their conversations more productive.
Melissa continues, not everything requires a response. She says, I suspected he was saying something just to get a rise out of me. When it came to his most provocative text, I responded by simply not responding at all. I'd force myself to put the phone down, give myself time to sit in how the text made me feel. Noticing what was coming up for me, and committing not to texting back until I could reply in a way that would make me and my lawyer proud. Sometimes the best response is no response, so consider whether staying in your power and your business and deciding to feed that energy at all might be the most effective course of action.
I wholly agree with this. I got through many business meetings where I would mentally tell myself sometimes the kindest thing I can do is to say nothing, do nothing, and not give it or them my attention or focus. I used to mentally tell myself that. I even used to say the only gift that I can give at this point is to not respond. Sometimes it's really far better to just keep your mouth shut.
I agree. I'm learning to be more discerning with my decisions, but it has proven to be a very effective method of preserving energy and space.
The next thing that Melissa offers is to go high. She says, binging the show Suits during this time period, she felt like her energy matched the energy of the show, trying to win at the expense of somebody else. This is a critical point. She says this was not the energy she wanted to bring into a new phase of her life. It's really important to watch what we allow into our fields. This is significant, and she illustrates this here, briefly touching on it. For some reason, when we fill our minds with certain things, it's the same as you can add something that's more peaceful and calm into the mix, or something that's more harmonious, or you can add something in that can make people and things more agitated. We know this just through video games, we know this through aggressive films. We begin building up sort of a numbing, if you will, but also those higher hits and higher hits. We even know through the internet there are certain things will really go viral. One of them is anything that causes the feeling of anger. It's not all that. That's just illustrating this further. When she says they go low, we go high, that is a really big thing to remember, is to fill your space and your mind as much as possible with positive, more balanced things, and to limit your interactions that don't support that. She said that she found when she changed her own behavior, their entire dynamic improved. She wasn't sure whether her example altered the way her ex behaved, or if her self-reflection and commitment to integrity changed the way she viewed his actions and communication. But either way, it turns out it really does just take one person to improve a relationship. I have clients where they have had extremely difficult relationships. That is my experience too. We work on them, on letting go of the negative past relationships, any difficulties, any blocks, anything associating or linking them to that person that continues to create this sort of negative pattern in their lives. We draw in better energies for the relationships and lives that they want. I have seen this over and over and over again. What my experience is, when you change your own vibration, it shifts theirs, or at least moves you out of that negative vibration of where they are.
I used to identify that energy pattern to myself with that cliche, it takes two to tango. And I started seeing a lot of altercations as a dance that I was really good and I knew all the choreography of. And then I started thinking of the song Let It Be by the Beatles as a replacement for the tango music. Let it be.
Melissa offers some great suggestions for additional support with an especially difficult ex. She talks about a co-parenting class that can give you valuable strategies for establishing a healthy relationship and will connect you with a group of people going through the same challenges. That is a huge benefit. She also says consider looking into parallel parenting, which is like enacting the red version of the self-boundaries that she set earlier. She says parallel parenting strictly limits the nature of interactions between between parents and maintains a business-like documentation of schedules, requests, and agreements. It gives you tools to effectively work together during a high conflict situation. That is extremely beneficial, and I have worked with clients who have done parallel parenting, and it really does help diffuse and unplug situations. She also offers co-parenting apps like Our Family Wizard, Co-Parently, and Two Houses to help each parent communicate, share schedules, and document expenses. And she says to involve a therapist or family mediator to assist in difficult conversations. All of these things help to limit direct contact, give you more space, allow you to be more respectful, and keep your boundaries. Finally, she says, work with your attorney on some general rules of engagement. These are her basic strategies for getting help and additional support with a situation with your ex.
Melissa reminds us of YCDI, the principle of. Thank you for joining us on the Golden Seams podcast. If you found value in today's episode, we invite you to like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit.
If you're ready to transform your life, create prosperity aligned with your authentic self, and master the art of setting clear, kind boundaries, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Remember, we're diving deep into breathwork with Deanna, exploring energetic boundaries with Maria, a Brazilian shaman, and unveiling exclusive content that will revolutionize your approach to personal growth.
We're truly grateful for your presence and participation in this journey of self-discovery. Remember, your path to authenticity and prosperity is unique, and we're honored to be a part of it. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep shining your authentic light. This is Gabe and Michae, signing off from the Golden Seams. May your path be golden, and may you find the strength to mend and beautify the broken parts of your life, just like the art of kintsugi. Take care, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening.